had more advance notice and if there was more time to do things like provide input and review. And then again, going back to that internet piece, it's not the only way that we need to be communicating with communities like this where internet access is kind of spotty. So using other ways to get in touch with people, including mailing it out and perhaps using the local DFO office as a place where you can pick up paper copies of documents, or you can send your feedback forms in after tonight, which you can do, by the way. So in case I forget to say this later, if you have further thoughts beyond tonight, leave them with the local DFO office, write them down, or send them in by email, or whatever works for you. Or leave them with Ken. If you see him strolling around, track him down, grab him by the leg. And we'll make sure that those things are all sent to the places they need to be for us to incorporate them. Also using the Chamber of Commerce as a point of contact, and perhaps the people on that in the Chamber can help to distribute information within the community. So that was another suggestion in terms of making committees effective and getting local input to them. There was another feeling that committee their input needs to be unfiltered in terms of how it's communicated upwards. So when it's going to decision makers and governments, I think it was Alex who made the point that you want to make sure that input is accurately represented when it reaches those people. And that decisions need to be well based in science and not just in speculation and in people's vested interests. So a couple of the topics that came up that might be important for working groups, there was a lot of talk around oil and gas, around the Enbridge pipeline and what that means for shipping traffic coming past local communities. So people wanted to know about what areas are more and less dangerous for navigation. Is this even something that we want to see on our part of the coast? If it does happen, what are some of the safest routes, and what are some of the sensitive or important areas for resources that should be avoided? And what are the economic impacts for different areas of the coast of these projects, whether they be positive or negative? For example, the impacts that it may have on other resources or values in those areas. Another thing that was mentioned as a topic for a working group or further discussion was the idea of investigating what are the local economic opportunities to benefit from resources in this area. What can be done to develop those opportunities? Topics for meetings and workshops. There was quite a bit of support for the idea of having perhaps sort of regular meetings where local knowledge is shared and sort of the most recent scientific information about the status of important resources is shared so people know what's happening. There were also suggestions for, again, I guess we were sort of figuring out whether it was a workshop or a working group or what the most effective format was. But again, that discussion about what is the future with respect to oil and gas and tanker traffic, and also a suggestion similarly about having more focused discussions about sport fishing and how it's conducted in the area. In terms of links to existing processes, a couple suggestions linking to transboundary processes, so where we have agreements or arrangements with Alaska or with the United States that might affect or relate to this PNCIMA area, we need to link into those. We need to link into the First Nations planning that's happening in different communities and make sure that that's effectively connected to PNCIMA planning. A couple other suggestions, the Tula Foundation, which is a non-profit society based here in the Central Coast that has some interest in supporting the Central Coast, and also making sure that we link into the Central Coast Chamber of Commerce. In terms of feedback using the internet, making sure that that's not the only way that we invite feedback, but that we might be able to do interesting things like live video webcasting or online forums where people can sign into like a chat and ask questions and have discussions with other people in the forum. Sending out questions and inviting people to vote on them online, and perhaps even using social media like Facebook. So anything that my group wants to add there that I may have missed?
Not just the economic, but the human impact in case of a disaster that could be from the transportation of gas or
Right.
condensate.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So to include the human impact because economically avoid that problem.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Okay, so, step out of the way, I feel like so our group was, I would say, more radical than the back group. We didn't get through all the questions, but there was some good information, some good comments made, and I would ask the folks in the group to step up and help if I missed them. So, specifically around the IREC in terms of how it should be struck, there was some conversations around that it should be regional. There should be regional tables, and that perhaps they could work at some level with a broader table, but most of the work would be done either at a work group level or at a regional table like the Central Coast, North Coast, North Island sort of structure. The IREC, there's some comments made around that it looks like, based on the bullets that were in the document, that it's really not a grounded enough committee or level of people to make decisions on issues, and that the decisions ought to be made at a more local level. That most of the work that's identified in those bullets ought to be done in working groups as opposed to at that level of the table as well. I guess that's kind of repeating. There was a significant concern that the IREC, the process, would not have enough teeth. It does not look like it has any teeth to make any real decisions. The recommendations really aren't enough and aren't powerful enough to send the message out about what needs to happen. Is that what you're looking for?
Stop right done?
No, I've got it. I just want to make sure I'm covered. So, in terms of how to strike that group or to adjust it for participation, it should be regional tables that should be broadly represented. Bring in the various municipal level governments, the First Nations in the areas, some of the sector representatives, etc. That there needs to be significant outreach, education. You need to engage the youth in this process, and that it's very important that you're building enduring relationships, and that there's constant or consistent representation, so that you don't have different people coming to the table all the time. You have either the same people, or I guess the same people that are actually coming regularly to these meetings and not being treated all the time. You need to make sure that any recommendations that this group sends forward are strongly supported, that there needs to be solid goals and objectives and identified outputs that everyone buys into, and there needs to be constant follow-up. There's also a statement that some of our group would like made around the Enbridge process, and that because Coastal First Nations has unanimously opposed the Enbridge product, that this PNCIMA process should not be engaging with Enbridge. It's a process that's outside, so it should not be picked.
No, it was that out of respect for the Coastal First Nations, who have unanimously declared that complete opposition to the Enbridge pipeline and associated tanker traffic, that should be a position of this effort that purports to protect our coast, and that should